You make good money. You know that. More than your parents did at your age. More than most people you went to school with. More, probably, than you once thought you would when you were just starting out. And yet, at the end of the month, there is this moment. You open your bank account and the number is smaller than it should be. Not catastrophically small. Not an emergency. Just smaller than it feels like it should be after everything you earned this month. And you sit there trying to remember where it all went. This is not a story about people who don't earn enough. This is a story about people who earn plenty and still arrive at the end of every month feeling like something is wrong. Still feel the same quiet financial anxiety they felt before the last raise. Still sense, somewhere underneath the income and the lifestyle, that the security is not quite landing the way it was supposed to. The reason is not what you think. It is not the coffee. It is not a budgeting problem. It is not a discipline problem. It is something far more structural. A mismatch between how your brain processes income, how your social environment reshapes your spending, and how the modern economy is designed to absorb exactly what you earn, regardless of how much that turns out to be. And it tends to get worse the more you earn. Let's start with a concept called the hedonic treadmill. The basic finding, replicated across decades of psychological research, is that humans adapt to improved circumstances faster than they expect to, and then require the next improvement to feel the same level of satisfaction. A raise feels good. Then it becomes the new normal. The anxiety that temporarily lifted returns at the same level, just attached to a higher income. You run faster. The belt speeds up to match. You stay in the same place emotionally. This happens to everyone across all income levels. But for high earners, there is a second layer on top of this that makes the pattern more complicated and harder to escape. When your income goes up, your reference group changes with it. The people around you, the neighborhood you can now afford, the restaurants your colleagues talk about, the vacations that seem normal in your professional social circle, all of these shift upward alongside your income. And your brain, which evaluates almost everything by social comparison rather than by absolute value, recalibrates its sense of what is normal based on what it sees around it every day. This effect has a name and a body of research behind it. Erzo Lutmer, an economist whose work on income and subjective well-being has been widely cited, found that how much your neighbors earn has a significant and measurable effect on your own life satisfaction, independent of how much you actually earn yourself. In other words, if your income rises but the incomes of the people around you rise faster or further, you can feel worse off even though you are objectively earning more than you ever have. Your brain does not measure financial security in absolute dollars. It measures it in relative position. And when your reference group rises with your income, the felt sense of security barely moves at all. Psychologists sometimes call this relative deprivation. It sounds like an academic term. It does not feel like one. It is the specific low-grade feeling that your income, however large it looks on paper, does not feel like enough. Because enough is always defined by what the people around you have, not by what you need. Now combine this with what researchers call lifestyle inflation. Every time your income grows, your spending adjusts to match. Not all at once, and not always through deliberate choices, but gradually and almost inevitably. The apartment gets nicer. The car gets newer. The subscriptions accumulate. The meals out become more expensive. The gym upgrades. The brands shift slightly upward at every income level. The small premiums that seemed indulgent at a lower salary start to feel like basic standards. None of these feel like decisions in the moment. Each one feels like a natural upgrade, a reasonable response to your new income level, just keeping up with where you are now. Milton Friedman, one of the most influential economists of the 20th century, described something he called the permanent income hypothesis. His observation was that people do not just spend based on what they earn this month. They spend based on what they expect to earn over their lifetime. When income rises significantly, the brain unconsciously treats the new income as the permanent new baseline, and the lifestyle adjusts upward to match that baseline, not as a temporary spike of spending, as a permanent new floor. The result is that your expenses do not just rise after a raise, they lock in at the higher level. And if anything disrupts your income, a career shift, a gap in employment, an economic contraction, The lifestyle has almost nowhere to shrink to because the new floor has become structurally load-bearing. You are not living above your means in the way people usually imagine. You are living exactly at your means, which leaves no margin for anything. Richard Thaler, the Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economist, documented something else that completes this picture. He called it mental accounting, the way people mentally organize their money into separate, invisible categories and then treat each category according to different emotional rules based on where the money came from. Your regular salary goes in one mental bucket. Your bonus goes in another. A tax refund feels different from both. Money you earn from a side project feels almost like found money, separate from your real finances. And because each bucket feels psychologically distinct, you spend from each one according to different standards, often in ways that make no mathematical sense when you look at your finances as a whole. You might feel cautious about a relatively small discretionary purchase from your main account while spending freely from a bonus. You might carry a credit card balance in one mental bucket while keeping a savings account in another, never quite combining the two into the net position they actually represent. For high earners, mental accounting is amplified by financial complexity. More income means more accounts, more categories, more products, more decisions. Each one feels manageable in isolation. Altogether, the fragmentation makes the overall picture harder to see clearly and easier to avoid seeing at all. But there is something else driving this that almost no financial content addresses directly. The higher your income, the more precisely the commercial world has designed its offerings to capture it. Luxury goods, premium subscriptions, higher-end housing markets, private schools, business class travel, concierge medical services, exclusive fitness experiences, high-end restaurants. All of these are priced specifically to absorb a significant share of income from people who earn what you earn. The market understands your income band. It prices to your maximum willingness to pay. And because each individual premium feels proportionate to your income, the cumulative drain across a year can easily absorb the entire gap between a high income and meaningful savings. Dan Ariely, the behavioral economist and author of Predictably Irrational, documented something he called arbitrary coherence, the way humans anchor their sense of what a reasonable price looks like to whatever number they first encountered in a category. If you started your career flying economy, economy is your anchor. If your income rises and you fly business class once, the anchor shifts. Economy begins to feel like deprivation, even though you flew it for years without experiencing it that way. The anchor has moved. The former luxury has quietly become the new baseline. And cutting baseline spending feels like going backward, not like making a rational financial decision, which means it almost never happens voluntarily. This anchor shifting occurs across your entire lifestyle as income rises. The dinner that felt indulgent at $30 feels ordinary at $90. The apartment that seemed more than enough at $1,500 a month feels cramped at $3,000. The salary that would have seemed extraordinary to your younger self now barely feels like enough because your entire frame of reference has reorganized itself around the higher number. Here is the counterintuitive finding that most people never expect. People with lower incomes, on average, save a higher proportion of their income than people with high incomes when you look at behavioral patterns rather than absolute amounts. The assumption is that earning more makes saving easier. The reality is that earning more generates more social pressure to spend at a higher level, more commercial precision targeting at your income bracket, a more complex financial life with more leakage points, and a reference group that has normalized a level of consumption that quietly consumes the surplus your raise was supposed to create. High income does not automatically produce wealth. High income maintained over time with a consistent and intentional gap between income and spending produces wealth. Those are genuinely different things. And the difference between them is almost entirely behavioral. Raj Chetty, the Harvard economist whose research on economic mobility has reshaped how economists think about income and outcomes, found that income level alone is a weaker predictor of long-term financial well-being than behavioral consistency. Specifically, the pattern of saving regularly across multiple income levels and life changes, even when the amount seems small relative to the lifestyle. The people who build significant wealth over a lifetime are rarely the highest earners in any particular year. They are the people who hold the gap open between what they earn and what they spend, even as every signal around them tries to close it. So what is this video actually asking you to consider? Not to feel guilty about your income, not to downgrade your life or pretend that money does not buy comfort, because it does. Not to live like you are still earning what you earned 5 years ago. It is asking you to notice one specific thing. When your income changes, what changes with it? And how fast? Because the speed of lifestyle expansion is the variable that determines whether income builds something lasting or whether it funds a slightly more expensive version of the same financial anxiety you had at a lower salary. Every time your income rises, there is a window. A brief period before the lifestyle inflates to fill the new space, before the better apartment, before the newer car, before the upgraded subscriptions settle into their new shapes around the higher number. That window is where real financial progress actually happens. And most people close it within a few months of a raise, without ever registering that it was a window at all. One way to think about it is this. The constraint on your financial future is not your income. It never was. It is your lifestyle speed. The rate at which your spending follows your earning upward every time the number changes. You make good money. That was never the question. The question is whether the money you make is building something, or simply funding a more expensive version of the same quiet uncertainty you felt before you started earning it.